As we count down the days to Las Vegas, I'm connecting with speakers, sponsors, and industry experts to get a pulse on what we can expect to see at Enterprise Connect 2026.
Hi, my name is Matt Clare. I'm VP of Product Marketing at UJET. Formerly spent most of my career in the contact center and CX space with vendors like Google, Mitel, and Prairie Fire Software.
Matt, always good to spend some time with you, especially now that we are counting down the days to Enterprise Connect Las Vegas this time. Lots of cool things in store for the conference. Here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to have a conversation with you in two parts. One, let's talk specifically about what's coming up here at Enterprise Connect. But EC and any industry event is also a good moment to stop and look at what is happening in the world around us. So if you're game for it, I have some questions on that front too.
Couldn't be more excited.
You don't look excited. I don't believe you. I don't believe you for a minute, Claire. Here we go. So if I think about Enterprise Connect, and one of the biggest challenges, it's that there is a lot that will be distracting and kind of going after people's time and attention, whether it's sessions, all of the solutions that are on the expo floor, or the buffet and the machines. There's lights, there's sounds. Lots of people are trying to figure out how do they make the most of their time there. If I think about UJET and what you're going to be doing at Enterprise Connect this year, what are the things that you're helping leaders understand better than they can right now? Why might I want to stop by your booth at this year's conference?
Yeah, great question. It's a noisy conference for sure. I think the first and most important thing is everybody talks about transformation, but not a lot of people actually are transforming. And so I think for our side, like, transformation's always been in the UJET DNA to the extent where for the first few years that UJET was even a platform, folks thought of us more as like a mobile CX platform than a CCaaS. And we've kind of evolved into a CCaaS platform over the last decade. And that's rethinking everything from how do consumers engage on their phone, how do you tap into mobile device kind of authentication so your customers don't have to tell you who they are. They thumbprint it on their phone to a mobile app. We know who you are. We know where you are. We can serve you more efficiently. But I think most importantly right now, it's about two things. It's about, first and foremost, the importance of humans and customer experience, which not many people are talking about. The overriding these days definitely seems to be like humans are a problem that need to be replaced. AI is the solution to replacing humans. And I think the industry's slowly waking up to the fact that, like, no, humans build relationships. Humans drive loyalty. Humans build trust. Humans, generate revenue and customer lifetime value. So we're definitely like that vendor that's like, hey, I'm not saying AI is not here. We have AI. If you want AI, we can help you. But I also want to reframe and kind of take maybe a controversial stance to this narrative that has been human replaced. Like, human replace has a time and a place. As a consumer, there's things that I definitely don't need to interact with a human for. I'm resetting my password. Great. I'm checking my balance. Great. I don't need a human for that. But if I'm canceling my account and you're going to let me do that via self-service, which is this thing that recently happened to me, I think you as an organization are probably missing the mark, and you have one moment to keep me from churning. You have one moment to cross-sell, upsell me when the time is right. So we're definitely trying to change that narrative a little bit. The other thing I'll say is UJET's definitely, like, for the last 10 years been focused on optimizing human and virtual agent performance. That's the name of the game. And as an industry, it's definitely what we've been thinking about first and foremost. But through a recent UJET acquisition of a conversational analytics platform called Spiral by UJET, we've really been trying, again, to like change the narrative and reframe CX leaders' thinking around, like, what's the value of your customer conversations? Yeah. Is the value of your customer conversations how fast you were able to solve and how accurate you were able to solve? Or is it that there's tidbits of information in those conversations that could potentially lead to that conversation never needing to happen in the first place? And I don't know about you, Justin, but for me, it's like the companies that I love the most, the organizations that I interact with the most, who I would tell you I have the greatest kind of CSAT with, they're the ones I never talk to. And that's because they're proactively looking at root cause, identifying pain points, and taking action such that the best experiences don't require interactions.
Yeah. Matt, there's two important things that I'll kind of double down on, even from my own exposure and experience with UJET over the years, from the origin to today's evolution. The first is this: it is an organization that has always been willing and unapologetic in the questioning of why are things the way that they are in service experiences today, and do they really have to be that way? And whether it's thinking about how humans interact through modalities, whether it's how, just second nature interacting with the mobile devices, or even to your point, the real wish that we all have is that our interactions with brands are frictionless, that they're free of failure, that frustration is never having to be introduced into the equation. The best type of interaction is the one that never had to happen in the first place in a lot of cases. And that posture and intent, I think, is meaningful because it is finely tuned into not only all of us as customers, but for brands to really be successful. If we are spending all of our time fixing things that are broken, that are mistakes, that are missteps, we never get any time to do the cool stuff. And I think every single person wants to come to their job and to be able to do the cool stuff. So I think that's really important and valuable. I think the other thing that I appreciate about what you said, and you just working with organizations of all sizes and doing some really cool things, but you are not losing sight or falling victim to, hey, we're just gonna pursue this new capability or this new technology for the sake of being able to say we're doing it. You're like, hey, we have that stuff, but let's make sure that we're able to do the right things for the right people at the right time. And I think that's really important. And certainly I know that will be on display at Enterprise Connect for people to be able to see those stories, to see the platform in action.
Absolutely, yeah. Couldn't agree more. It's something that, through my own conversations internally with product and engineering even, which isn't my purview, but I've been in the industry so long, we chat a lot, is always like, so a customer says they want something. Does it mean that they want it the way it was built 20 years ago? There's got to be a better way. And I think that, to your point, is absolutely core to the UJET DNA.
Yeah, so maybe to that point, if you think about what CX leaders will need to navigate over, let's just call it the next 12 to 18 months even, not think too far in advance. If you think about what they need to navigate and what they need to get right, what would you say is the thing? If you were doing this job today, or you had that piece of advice, what's the one thing that should really be winning and top of mind for these leaders over that period of time?
Yeah, I think it starts and ends with conversational analytics, to be honest. It's, for me, I think because the narrative from the vendors and the hyperscalers and the AI kind of leaders has been human replace. To my earlier point, humans are a problem to be replaced. And now we're seeing kind of contrary points of view relative to that. It's really all about getting super crisp as an organization on what's a high value interaction and what's a low value interaction. And the way that you do that is through conversational analytics, right? It's mapping what are our customers saying to their sentiment, to their outcomes. And when I say outcomes, I don't just mean handle times. I don't just mean deflection containment rates. I mean business outcomes, revenue, churn reduction, cross-sell, upsell, interaction reduction, etc. And I think that there's so much technology that could be implemented wrong right now. And we as an industry, I think we've seen, we drove that automation agenda so hard that I've talked to customers the last couple of years that came back and were like, we're over-deflecting. Why did you let us do this? We're leaving money on the table. Our cross-sell upsells have gone down, for example.
Right. It's interesting that you mention interaction analytics, because as I think about these conversations that I've been having ahead of Enterprise Connect, and what I am placing my bet on is what is going to be the buzzword, if we were to kind of analyze all of these conversations I've been having, outcomes is the word that is being used across many of these. And the thing that I think about that is going to be really important to use Enterprise Connect, or any time that you are with your peers, that you get to be with solution providers, that you get to be with consultants and analysts, is to pressure test the outcomes. My bet is lots of people are going to be talking about it. Look for the places where you can validate it, where you can contextualize it, and then you can get clarity on what your outcomes need to be at the end of this year and the end of next year. That, to me, kind of piggybacking on your idea of how do we dig into the insights is then how do we get really clear on what we're trying to materially improve for our customers, for our employees, and for our organization at large?
Yeah, and I think to that point, for folks that are attending the event, like think big picture, think outside the box, right? Like you hear the word outcome sometimes and it's like average handle time and first contact resolution is the same outcomes we've been talking about as an industry for 20 years. Like I firmly believe, and I've been doing Enterprise Connect so long, I probably remember a point 10, 12 years ago when the first panel I ever saw at Enterprise Connect that was like, oh yeah, contact center is not a cost center. Like we do provide business value. And it was like this earth shattering thing. And I think now is like the point where like we've reached like there's, momentum there. You're actually seeing business results and you're seeing organizations like, there's still challenges, don't get me wrong. Breaking down operational silos is a real concern in a lot of these organizations we're serving. But the tools are there to help you actually break those walls down, which facilitates the people and process challenge of breaking down those silos.
Spot on. That was the panel I facilitated at last year's Enterprise Connect. One of the opening remarks is challenging contact center leaders. If you can't translate what you do into terms that resonate with the business of the business, I use the analogy of if I were a CX leader today, I would view that opportunity as being the business Rosetta Stone. Take all of the things that I care about, and if I am massively relevant and helpful and connected to all of these other parts of the organization, I mean, that becomes indispensable. That becomes incredibly strategic. And if more people think of the contact center that way at the end of this year than they did coming into it, that's a win.
It's also a culture shift. Like, I think, for so long we thought of it as we're still here saying the word contact center, right? But like the CX culture shift, if you will, where it's like leaders are like collaborating across functions and realize, like I say it all the time and I firmly believe there's nobody in an organization anywhere in the world that isn't impacting CX. Doesn't matter what your function is, right? Yeah. But if you're not preaching that from the top down, you run into these scenarios where it's like product engineering, I don't want to talk. Like, I don't hear from the contact center people about what we're doing wrong. And this is where like there's tools today where I can just go like, hey man, here's a report, here's your roadmap for fixing issues with the product or web service or whatever it is. And it's like, it's that the crosstalk function is more important than ever in getting CX right going forward. So yeah, huge culture shift.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've been toying with for maybe the better part of 2 years now is, if we think about contact center leadership as this kind of like functional siloed thing, I was like, what does it actually look like to lead your customer interactions? What would that role look like as that person who is thinking about we as a brand, how we set and make promises?
The contact center vendor space, like we talk about channels, but there's like, what about the channels we're not monitoring? What about Reddit? What about AI agents that are now interacting on behalf of your brand, right? What about social? And like sometimes you get silo sales and marketing are doing surveys. It's like, well, like it all matters. So unless you're bringing it all together and like that's where the gold is in those conversations and feedback sources.
Yeah. I have one more Enterprise Connect question for you. Then I want to speak more broadly than that. You said it yourself just moments ago. You've been coming to Enterprise Connect for a little bit of time. So I'm sure you've learned some lessons along the way of making the most of that experience. If I am brand new to this conference, what would be your best advice on what I can do before EC, while I'm on site, and after the event to ensure that it provides outsized value for me?
So for me, the before is always like have an intention. Like, why are you going, right? Like set goals. And your goals may change through the week as you're learning things, right? So it's like set goals, but be malleable, if that makes sense. I think like knowing your way around is crucial. I joke that I grew up at Enterprise Connect and my hair was brown back then. It was probably 20 pounds later. And so for me, as like a previous attendee, my big thing is like, holy cow, this isn't the Gaylord Palms anymore. How do I find my way around Las Vegas and this hotel and this convention center? Where am I supposed to be when? So like mapping your days is really important. For during, I think, so that was the before. For during, the single most important thing at events like this is connections. Like you can sit through a session for 30, 60 minutes, be completely wowed by it. And if you're like present and take the opportunity to connect and shake hands and say hello and ask questions or challenge a narrative that you disagree with, like that's where the magic at these events happens. So yeah, like stay present, stay hydrated. It's Vegas for crying out loud. And like prioritize human to human connections. And then lastly, like to my earlier point about have a plan, like turn what you learned into your roadmap. Maybe it's calling vendors and following up on things. Maybe it's interacting with analysts or consultants you met at the event, right? Like take every opportunity you have to take what you've learned and turn it into something meaningful for the organization you're working for, because it's going to be overwhelming if you let it get lost. It'll get lost. And next year you'll be at Enterprise Connect going, yeah, I remember this from last year. Maybe we should do something about it. Like you got to write it down. You got to capture it. You got to action it on the back end.
Yeah. You pull up a notebook somewhere like that. I was going to do something about that. It was such a great idea. Yeah, none of that. Love that advice. Okay, I want to revisit some things that you alluded to now more broadly as we think about what's to come, because that's the other interesting thing about Enterprise Connect. It really is a moment in time, and I think in a lot of ways it can be the catalyst or the indicator for what's going to come from there. What I know is we will see lots of people talking about automation. If I even think about the conversations that I'm having with enterprise leaders right now, they feel like the pace at which automation is coming out and being made available, both by technology companies, but also at companies themselves, is almost in a way outpacing what customers actually want or need. My own research is showing that. I'm just curious, like, what does that imbalance between AI being deployed and consumer desire and readiness reveal about this misunderstanding between CX leaders, their customers, and their own technology stacks?
I jumped the shark on this question and kind of alluded to this earlier. It's defining two things. And I asked a really interesting question at a conference that I spoke at last month where I was like, how many people ask their customers what they'd like automated before you automated it? And not a hand in the room went up. Like, don't be scared to ask that question. You don't want to risk, like, AI is not necessarily cheap. You don't want to be automating use cases your customers are just trying to get out of the second that it kicks off, right? So for me, again, it's this concept of high value conversation that you want to be human to human, and lower value conversation you want to automate. What's interesting is there is not a one-to-one mapping between what a consumer thinks is, a low value conversation or a high value conversation, and what they may want to be automated, and what a business thinks is low or high value and just wants to automate. So I think it's getting laser focused on this concept of like stack rank in the types of conversations you want to automate, checking with your customers to make sure you're implementing things that they actually care about and are going to use, because nobody wants to get stuck in a flow and be going, connect me to an agent, human. Yelling. Now I'm yelling, And I think that's the biggest piece, because to your point, all the data shows like customers still want to interact with humans. Lots of customers enter a virtual agent flow and immediately try to get out of it to a human. And propensity is changing, and based on customer segment, age demographics, and what the product or service is, you're going to get very different responses. So there's not this like easy cookie cutter answer to how you balance this outside of you define it as a business, you figure out how your customers define it and what they want from you as a vendor, and you optimize for that.
So Matt, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but if we think about historically what CX teams have done when it comes to customer interactions, they've actually tried to optimize and design around things that probably shouldn't have even been contacts or interactions in the first place. If organizations shift to a place where they're able to avoid those types of service interactions, how do you think that's going to change metrics, how we design priorities, or even the role that humans are playing in the delivery of service?
Yeah, great question, and a loaded one. I think first and most importantly, it's important to know that in this world where like contact avoidance that's your mandate, like things like average handle time and first contact resolution, they still matter. But instead of that being like, handle times, deflection rates, containment, first contact resolution, number of transfers, CSAT, traditional stuff like that, like you're actually starting to think about like how many interactions are we handling? If we're optimizing to remove unnecessary interactions, the number of interactions should technically go down. I think from there it's like this concept of, okay, well, we're investing all this money and all these people in this CX experience, like being able to tie it back to real C-level business objectives and outcomes is more important than ever. So being able to correlate, all right, well, we had a call contained in a virtual agent and the CSAT was 4.5 stars. What does that mean to the customer lifetime value? What does that mean to revenue generation? What does that mean to, things like churn avoidance is equally important in this world, right? So because you're going to automate all the low value stuff, as I said earlier, you're going to keep those, relationship building, high value conversations with the contact center agents and human to human interactions, like things like cross-sell upsells, things like churn reduction, things like revenue generation. Again, it's not easy to do because traditional CCaaS alone doesn't consider those metrics. So this is where like tool adaptability and being able to bring in, signals from outside there's people are saying stuff about your products and services on Google reviews and the Play Store and the App Store, and like being able to get that single source of truth is more important than ever in changing the narrative that contact centers just sunken costs and really turning it into the machine.
Yeah. As an operations person, kind of born and raised, I mean, if you grew up on the Enterprise Connect floor, I grew up in operations. I mean, this to me is the ideal. There's so many times, even I think in my own career, where it's like, if only we had known that conversation was happening, if only we knew this information was out there. All right, Matt, I have one last question for you, at least for now, until I get you in person in Las Vegas. It's this: if the best customer interaction is the one that never happens, what do you believe that organizations must stop doing today to make that outcome a reality?
So first and foremost, I think organizations need to stop thinking that CX success lies in a contact center channel. Think outside of the channel, right? Like if you think about, again, yourself as a daily consumer, I'm going to make the assumption Justin asks AI agents like Gemini or ChatGPT questions and recommendations, or whether it's problem solving or what restaurant I want to go to, right? So it's really starting to think like, all right, there's all these outside sources outside of email, chat, SMS, the traditional contact center voice channels, etc., where customer conversations are happening and you may not be in control. So I think being able to analyze conversations and customer feedback sources at scale outside of just a standalone CCaaS or a standalone CRM as we know it today is first and foremost super important. I think second is being able to break down those operational silos and have like a truly CX first mentality, which is every body in the organization is trying to deliver great customer experiences. And that may mean that some of the conversations that are happening, say sales and marketing isn't optimized. It may say that the website stinks. It may say that the product's got bugs. And all that data that's coming in through those experiences, through those feedback sources, needs to be shared and it needs to be propagated. I think until we do that, you're going to be stuck in this like sunken cost perception of contact center for the rest of time. I think only by doing those two things, analyzing conversations and feedback sources at scale, and then on the people and process side, breaking down those silos and going, look, we're all in this thing together. And then third and most important is like find a partner that makes it easy so you can actually do that, right? Like I'm not suggesting we go out and hire like tens of data scientists and invest in these custom BI tools. I'm saying no, there's tools out there today that help you do this stuff at scale. So yeah, that would be my playbook.
Yeah, I love it, Matt. It's always so good to just see what you're thinking about, to of course watch UJET on your journey. Enterprise Connect 26 is going to be a good one, and we are almost there. So what do you say, sir? I will see you in Las Vegas.
See you in Las Vegas. Bet on black.